Peppa Pig. Something is wrong with Peppa. One rainy morning, Peppa woke up earlier than usual. Her room seemed normal, but something felt off. She looked in the mirror and noticed her reflection appeared strange, slightly distorted. Maybe it's just my imagination, she thought, and went down for breakfast. Throughout the day, Peppa noticed her friends acting differently. Susie, usually cheerful, kept her distance and barely spoke to her. During playtime, Susie finally said, "You look strange today." Peppa frowned but didn't reply. Later, while playing in the yard, she caught her reflection in a puddle. Her eyes seemed darker, and her smile was unnervingly wide, almost creepy. She blinked and the reflection looked normal again. By evening, her family started noticing changes in her behavior. Peppa was unusually quiet, no longer laughing, and her occasional smiles seemed unsettling. "Are you feeling okay, dear?" Mummy Pig asked at dinner. "Yes, Mummy," Peppa replied, but her voice sounded lower and stranger than usual. Late that night, George woke up to strange whispers coming from Peppa's room. He tiptoed to her door and peeked inside. She was standing in front of her mirror, whispering something, but her reflection wasn't moving in sync. It seemed alive, moving on its own. "Peppa?" George asked, his voice trembling. She slowly turned toward him, and for a brief moment, her eyes glowed red. "Go back to bed, George," she said in a voice that wasn't hers. The next day, things got even worse. Peppa became aggressive, breaking George's toys and ripping books. She seemed to enjoy it, laughing in a hoarse, chilling tone that made Mummy and Daddy Pig exchange worried glances. Later that night, loud noises came from Peppa's room. Her parents rushed upstairs to find her standing by the window. She didn't move, but her shadow on the wall writhed and twisted as if it had a life of its own. "Peppa, what are you doing?" Mummy Pig asked, her voice shaking. "I'm not Peppa," she said, turning slowly. Her eyes were completely black, and her smile was unnaturally wide. The next morning, the house was empty. No one knew what had happened to Mummy, Daddy, or George. The camera slowly panned to the kitchen, where Peppa sat alone at the table. She smiled, her eyes still dark and empty.